here, right now, right 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 here, right now.
Well, that's all right. It doesn't matter what you guys see and what I see as long as they see it. And I haven't heard from them, so I think we're good. I hope we're not live right now because nobody's told me.
You are live right now, Ian. 10:15 as scheduled, sir.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't hear you at all tonight there, buddy, so I wasn't sure. Who we got tonight? Is it Gypsy?
Yes, you have Gypsy tonight. Yes, we do turn down your mics only because we do have other shows broadcasting at that time, so...
Oh, okay, yeah, thanks. Because back in the day when we first started, I could always hear you guys. But anyway, well, ladies and gentlemen, I got the one and only Dr. James Forsythe here, who was one of the stars of my first film, iCure Cancer, which you can kind of see in the background. He is an MD that saw the light and realized there was more to the curing cancer than just using poison burns. So... and he was one of the stars of the book Knockout. He was in this book my good friend Burton Goldberg produced. Very good book. Alternative Medicine, Definitive Guide to Cancer. That was my first Bible, really, as far as cancer goes.
Ian, I don't mean to cut you off. Can you turn on your camera? Your camera is not on at this time.
Oh, it looks like it is.
No, I just have your profile picture, sir.
Oh, I just turned it off.
There you are. There you are.
There we are.
We got you. We can see you.
Okay, well, not too many difficulties so far tonight. That's good. Okay, so everybody, James, welcome, James. How are you doing tonight?
Great, Ian. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah. Thank you for being on. What an honor and privilege, man. You're one of the bigwigs out there, and you got the MD initials behind your name, which is always good because a lot of people think we're quacks because we don't have any initials behind our names. But I go to guys like you to learn from. So let's start from the beginning. How on earth did a Western medical doctor ever get interested in anything but?
Oh, well, I have to start at the beginning. Went to UC Berkeley. Of course, that was a good start right there. I had a little radical blood in me, although at that time it was very straight Ivy League school. And in fact, Ian, they made a movie called Berkeley in the 60s, and it said, which was my graduating class at 1960, and it said this was the last normal graduating class from Berkeley. So after that, all hell broke loose, as you know, with the women's lib and the anti-ROTC and the free speech movement, Mario Savio, and everything that was crazy went on there after that. So after Berkeley, I majored in physiology, biochemistry, and was a 3.5 grad. Went directly across the bay to UC San Francisco Med School, and was very poor at the time. And so I had to engage in a teaching career. While in med school, I actually taught my class physiology and biochemistry while I was a student myself, earning some extra money, and I had scholarships. And then got to my senior year, and I was really broke. So they called me in, and they said, you know, James, we don't think you're going to make it financially. We've looked at your financial records, and you may want to consider just dropping out. And I said, no, I think I'll join the Army. So I joined the senior Army program, was commissioned as a second lieutenant, and that paid my way through my senior year, and I paid off some bills then too. So I got out of my med school and went directly into a rotating internship right at Letterman Army Hospital on the Presidio. And then the Vietnam War started to heat up, and I said, oh boy, we're kind of at the wrong place at the wrong time here. So I wasn't sure what specialty I wanted, and so I chose pathology because it's a good background for just about any other medical specialty. And went to Honolulu, Hawaii, Tripler Army Hospital, and spent a couple years there becoming a pathologist. And then they shipped me to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, Fayetteville, where I was part of the Special Forces groups, the paratroopers, and I ran a couple labs there. And after 2 years in North Carolina, I finally got orders to Vietnam, and went to Vietnam and opened 3 labs there, and had some close calls, got rocket attacks, went down on a helicopter, and a bunch of horrible things happened, but I made it out alive, so can't complain. And went back and then decided I had 6 months more Army time due, so I had to pay my dues at Letterman Army Hospital in the Presidio again. And then decided I'm going to go into internal medicine. I like dealing with people rather than test tubes and blood samples. So I did my internal medicine residency at Children's Hospital in San Francisco, and then I decided the new field of oncology was just starting up at that time. We'd never heard of the word oncology before. And so I was among the first starters, and we had quite an illustrious class. Most of the guys that I trained with went on to be department heads around the country and wrote many famous books on cancer and so on. And so we had a very elite class. We learned a lot. And so I kind of had my choice of going where I wanted to. I stayed in San Francisco and practiced for a couple of years. And at that time, Ian, we were dealing with AIDS cases that were getting cancer, and had no idea what we were dealing with at the time because there weren't even the tests available to test for AIDS. And the hospital I was at, St. Francis in San Francisco, was just a couple blocks away from Polk Street, which was the kind of the cultural center for the AIDS population at that time. It's moved to Castro Street since then. And so that was a very challenging time of my life. Dealing with an unknown disease and being kind of scared about whether it was contagious and whether anyone, how to treat these patients and yet be close to them without, being scared of them and not getting contaminated by whatever they had. And so it was kind of dicey at the time. I mean, pathologists stopped doing autopsies at the time because they didn't want to get contaminated. There's a lot of scare with the blood supply, as you know. So went through that whole thing, then decided I wanted to move to a small town. Looked around, and Reno was ideal because they had no oncologists in northern Nevada. And so I've been here ever since. I've been here almost 40 years, Ian, and started off very conventionally doing what we call cookbook medicine, taking Betty Crocker cookbook off the shelf and following the exact protocol, and not deviating at all on dosing. But then after a while, I got to seeing long-term results, and gosh, how many patients are alive at 5 years and more? And it wasn't very great. Then I began studying the literature and seeing if everyone else had the same miserable results I was having, because they weren't really very good. So, but at the same time, Ian, I was getting patients from homeopaths and naturopaths in northern Nevada that were doing well and not following the usual paradigm of chemo, radiation, surgery, and yet doing well with nutrition and supplements and mind-body stuff. And I said, I've got to incorporate this somehow into my practice. And in order to do that, I had to become a homeopath too, which is legal in Nevada. There are only several states that board doctors in homeopathy. Nevada's one, and then Arizona's one, Connecticut, Oklahoma used to do it. They still do in some cases. So I became a homeopath after studying at the British Institute of Homeopathy. And so I became double boarded, and that allowed me to push the envelope in. And that was really the breakthrough for me, because since then I've been doing what's called integrative oncology. And since that time, I've done a number of outcome-based studies. An outcome-based study for our viewers is basically just a study that measures survival from the time you see them to the time of their demise, and compares that with what's in the literature for conventional therapies. And it's not very good, as you know, with conventional chemotherapy at 5 years, all adult cancers in a large retrospective study and have only shown a 2.1% survival rate at 5 years. So it's what manager of a baseball team would ever hire a player with a 2.1% batting average?
And there you go, folks. That's from an MD. You hear that? Chemo has a 2.1% success rate. An MD. Hello.
5 years. A similar study in Australia was 2.3%, so almost identical stats. So it wasn't very good no matter where in the world you looked for a success, it wasn't there. So I've tried to use other things, incorporating immune therapies, incorporating supplements, and getting into dietary things and alkalinization and hyperoxygenation. And my first study was with pawpaw, with Nature's Sunshine commissioned me to do a study on a product from the pawpaw tree that is being used internationally now and even in animal cancers it's an acetogenin compound which causes cancer cells to die off early. Cancer cells, as you know, are mortal. They don't know how to die. They basically live on and overwhelm the immune system and body because they have no ability to die off. And the pawpaw was one of the chemicals that would challenge that and lead the cells into a death spiral. Following that, I did a study on poly-MVA, which had actually similar mode of action, only seemed to be more effective. Poly-MVA was discovered at Stony Brook University by Dr. Merrill Garnett and used in animal studies, brain tumors, and so on, and proved to be effective. It was a complex of palladium and lipoic acid, plus a number of vitamins, minerals, and amino acids. That's what the MVA stands for, minerals, vitamins, amino acids. And the substance could be given intravenously or orally. It's a liquid, and it, again, causes cancer cells to go into the death spiral, or apoptosis, as they call it, Ian. So that proved to be very effective. However, after a couple years into the study with almost 225 patients accumulated, I got knocked on my door by the FDA, and not only by one gentleman, but by 15 various draft.
Shotguns, right? They had shotguns, didn't they, on you and your wife? I've told the story a million times that they had shotguns on you and your wife. And I always say, and I don't know why I say this, I guess because a lot of my friends are brown and red, but I'm like, this is an old white couple, and they got shotguns to their head. I mean, come on, not that you're old, but you know what I mean? You're not like me and my homies that are, you know.
The thing is, I'd never had a malpractice suit. I'd never had a disciplinary action by any board. So I thought I was clean, and my wife had been chairman of the Republican Party the year before, and we thought Harry Reid was probably behind it because it was one of those weird raids where they look completely through your house, but they never open your car doors or your garage door or your storage doors. So what are they really looking for? Is this all just to scare you? But one of the agents, and there were FBI there, FDA, and ICE, Immigration Custom Enforcement, and they accused me of using HGH, human growth hormone, off-label. That was their charge. And my wife kind of rolled her eyes because she knows, and I know, that every doctor in the world, every day of his practice, uses drugs off-label. For instance, if you use aspirin for a heart problem, you're using it off-label because it's designed for headaches. And so off-label usage is common. It's the rule rather than the exception in medicine. And especially in oncology, where you go from treatment to treatment to treatment based on the cancer becoming resistant to the given treatment you're at the present time, so that you're always changing drugs, and when you get past the second round of therapy, it's always off-label. So again, it didn't make sense to me. But anyway, I went through a lot of money, a lot of stress, lost all my privileges from the hospitals, lost all my insurance carriers, lost my directorships, everything I'd worked pretty hard for. And we were actually living on our savings, and we lost most of our patient base too because they had to go elsewhere to find doctors because I was no longer on their insurance carrier. So finally we went to trial. Before we went to trial, though, they came to my attorney and said, Dr. Forsythe seems to know a lot about human growth hormone, and we don't have a protocol for age-related growth hormone deficiency. Could Dr. Forsythe write a protocol for us? So they actually presented that to my attorney, and my attorney said, grab it and run. It was the best thing that ever happened because we actually took my lawyers with me around the country, and cost a lot of money because when they're sleeping, they're still making $500 an hour, so it wasn't cheap. But we've interviewed the leading heads of the growth hormone movement, the A4M group, the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine, etc., and got a lot of references, got a lot of sponsors, and then wrote the protocol. And then the FDA accepted my protocol, and the judge signed off on it, the prosecutor signed off on it, and we thought, well, this must be the end of the case, because here they come to us and admitted that there was no guilt and everything I was doing was okay. But no, they said they still wanted me to pay a several $100,000 fine plus be on probation for 2 years and lose my license. Well, that was just totally unacceptable. And so I fought it. I said, we'll take the jury trial instead. We took the jury trial, and 1 week into the trial, I had a unanimous jury verdict of not guilty. So after that, things got easier. I got my privileges back. I practice now is booming. We're engaged in further studies, Ian, and the one you and I were talking about earlier is an outcome-based study using genomics. Genomic testing is testing the cancer genes themselves for what they tell you. Thanks to the Human Genome Project, Ian, which, as you recall, was developed between 90 and 2000 at the cost of $3 billion to our government. It has isolated the function of all the human genes. The Human Genome Project was completed in 2000. Since then, it was first used on cancer patients in the early 2000 era, and the cost of the test at that time was prohibitive. It was about $100,000 per test. So no one could afford that, obviously. Now it's gotten down to where it's a couple thousand, but it's only done in 3 labs around the world. The FDA has still kept it out of our country for reasons which I don't want to be cynical, but obviously if you use a lot of different drugs and spend a lot of money on big pharma items, then you're not necessarily going to pick the right drugs at first. So I hate to be cynical with money issues, but I have a feeling that some of that, because there is a swinging door, as we know, between the FDA and big pharma. But anyway, my study right now is 550 patients at 42 months, showing a 60% survival rate for all stage 4 cancers. Now, this compares favorably with the 2.1% survival rate in the literature. My goal at this time really is to get to 5 years, 500 patients at that same. So I have to have the same parameters as the study group that is in their literature in the Journal of Clinical Oncology 2004, where they actually have set up the goalposts for me to follow. And with that goal in mind, if I can come up anywhere above 2.1, and I'm already 60%, and I think that we're going to show them that you don't really need full dose toxic chemo. You need to find out the exact drugs and supplements and hormones that work for each patient. I always tell patients, Ian, if I'm giving you the wrong drug, I'm giving you a poison. I'm not helping you at all. I'm delaying your treatment. I'm letting your tumor advance, and I'm hurting you. So don't go to conventional oncology and play their guessing game, because it is a guessing game. Yeah. And most of the time they overtreat with both chemo and radiation, sometimes with surgery too. Remember with ovarian cancer, where they had to do a second and third look operation, those proved to be useless when they started doing 2 and 3 operations. You cannot chase cancer with a knife or with a radiation beam. So just remember that golden rule in oncology. And any patient who subjects themselves to undue radiation is asking for problems. And that includes diagnostic radiation, Ian, because if you're getting PET and CAT scans all the time, sometimes every 2 or 3 months, you're getting 600 times the radiation dose that you would get from a single chest x-ray. Think about that. Just think about yourself standing in front of the chest x-ray machine one time and then doing it for 600 times and saying to yourself, am I getting too much radiation here? I mean, logically, it doesn't even make sense. But that's what happens when they keep doing these high radiation dosage scans, is the patients are being bombarded with useless radiation, because there's other ways to follow the cancer. You can do it with tumor markers, you can do it with MRIs, ultrasounds, thermograms. So there are many other ways to follow a cancer.
And let me ask you something, Doc. I've was at a seminar recently and finally realized that chemotherapy doesn't kill cancer stem cells. It will get the cancer cells, but they're not the ones that kill you. It's the cancer stem cells. And radiation actually makes those cancer stem cells stronger. Now, is that true?
I think it is. And for years I've preached, you know, with stage 2 breast cancers, and they used to, and they still do, routinely give women with stage 2 disease. That stage 2 means that the tumor is greater than 2.5 centimeters, or that it's migrated to the axillary lymph nodes. That's the definition of a stage 2 tumor. Now, those women are usually told to either have a lumpectomy or mastectomy, and then 4 to 6 months of chemo, followed by 6 weeks of radiation. Well, what are they treating with the radiation? I mean, they're treating themselves is the answer, because there's nothing to measure. There, you can see nothing on mammography, you can see nothing on MRI. There's nothing palpable in the breast. The markers are normal, but the women are still going to be getting 6 weeks of radiation on top of that. Why? I ask why. And every time I ask that question at a conference, of course, the conventional guys just look at me like, hey, what a stupid question. You know, we do it. We do it because we do it. They have no answer, really.
Yeah, they're total idiots and murderers, actually. And I hope someday there's trials. At this stage, any oncologists using chemo radiation surgery that don't know what you and I do, or do what we know, I consider them committing manslaughter. Just like if I go to the bar and knock some guy out and he hits his head on the way down and dies, I would do 10 years. I think if somebody's giving you radiation and chemo and it murders you, they should be looking into that, you know? Anyway,
Excuse me.
I wanted to...
I got
Yeah.
it.
It's okay. You're Dr. Forsythe. You can take calls on my show, man. You can do whatever you want.
This is what a doctor's life is like after all. We get calls night and day.
Right.
No, but I agree with everything you just said. And you know, they're hurting more patients than they're helping. And the thing is, the politics of cancer medicine just out trumps the science of it, and that's why they do it. They get away with it. There's lots of money in it for not only the drug companies, but for the doctors, the radiation people. And so it's just too hard for them to change. They don't want to change. They're going to have to change, though, because with genomics now, I don't know if you've heard the recent ads by Cancer Treatment Centers of America, where Maury Markman, who's the new medical director over there, and one of the top GYN oncologists in the country, says very emphatically, genomics is the future of cancer treatment in this country. And that's the way it is. I agree with him 100%. You have to look at your genes. Look at it this way. There's nothing more than your genetic structure. It's unique to you. Your genes, Ian, are different than anyone else. Say you had prostate cancer. Your profile would be totally different than anyone else with prostate cancer. In other words, the drugs that we pull up for you, the supplements that we pull up for you are going to be different than anyone else, just because your genes are different. And that makes sense, doesn't it? Because obviously, sure, you may share half your genes with your brother or your father or mother, but your genes, all of your genes are unique to you.
Exactly. I wonder if I can hook you up with Dr. Andrade. I'm working with some people down in Mexico because they don't have the AMA and FDA to deal with. And now that you guys are kind of cutting edge there in Nevada, right? Man, you guys should, but I don't know if you can do it, because here's the thing. The clinic in Mexico that I would go to myself, and I probably wouldn't do this because I'm just a believer in holistic, but let's say I was one of those that just couldn't believe Western medicine's wrong. Well, you can go to a clinic in Mexico where they just switch the order of the chemo radiation surgery. They give, let's say it's a breast tumor, they would circle the tumor with a low dose radiation. They would give you a low-dose chemo, so it's in your blood. So that way, when they scoop out the tumor, if any rogue cells get away, either the low-dose radiation and it's cobalt as well, it's not the horrible new stuff, will get it, or the chemo will get it. He's got an 85% success rate with women's breast cancer, and he's using chemo radiation surgery, but he also does what you guys do and gets them on the holistic diet, the alkaline diet, the juicing, and the supplements and stuff. So, I mean, that's something all American oncologists,
and they will be. I agree with you 100%. They will be in the next 5 to 10 years. They have to be. And of course, if Obamacare, if it ever comes to fruition, God help us, but they're going to have to look at, because the main cost of cancer medicine is in the cost of the drugs. And if you can use 90% less of the drugs, think of how much less the total bill will be for the country treating cancer that way and having less toxicity. Less toxicity means patients don't have to go to the hospital after the first course of chemo and get transfused or get their platelets replenished or get their infection treated. So it just makes sense. Let's treat the patients with the lowest possible dose with insulin and keep them healthy. Our patients don't even lose their hair when we treat them with chemo. And we're using drugs only that show an 80% or greater efficacy rate against the cancer cells. So you can't beat that. We're not looking at drugs that are only 10 or 20% effective. We're looking at drugs that are 80+% effective.
Wow. Now, just so you know, and anybody out there knows, I keep getting dropped from this. So I am not hearing thank God you're able to talk on your own, because I have not heard hardly any of your answers, which is driving me nuts because I want to know the questions as much as the people do. So I'm going to have to watch as soon as we're done. But I keep getting dropped. So if I repeat myself or whatever, that's why.
Okay. I'm sorry about that. I didn't realize you weren't hearing me.
No, that's okay. At least you're still holding the show for me. You're saving the day. So I didn't get to hear that part. But anyway, the Mexico thing, changing the order, I think works. I was wondering, are you guys legal yet in Nevada for marijuana, cannabis hemp oil?
The law has been passed, but it hasn't been implemented yet. Implemented yet, excuse me. And they're still playing with it. It's not legal at this time for us to prescribe anything except Marinol, which is the THC product that is legal out there. We have access to people who have hemp oil, however, and we can direct them to those people in other states. Just by our suggestion, we don't have any financial interest in those products at all, and we won't. But we do feel that Dr. Donald Abrams at UC San Francisco, Ian, is studying the hemp oil very closely, and it's a product that is distilled from the marijuana plant, and it has a certain CD chemical in it that is primarily anti-cancer rather than psychoactive. It's not like THC where it's completely psychoactive. The CD compound has an anti-cancer property to it, and just by rubbing it on the gums twice a day, we've seen positive effects, even in brain tumors, which are very hard to treat.
Okay, now again, I dropped there. Were you just talking about cannabis?
I was talking about hemp oil.
Okay, good.
Is there anything I can do on this end to
No. It's totally me this time, and the producers are saying so too. So if I get booted again, I may reboot, because you seem to be able to keep it going for me, and then by the time I get back on. So anyway, we're doing good. So I didn't get to hear the answer other than you are almost legal state, but not quite yet, right?
That's right. Exactly.
Good. Because I wanted to say I've been doing this almost 17 years, and it's only been in the last 2 I learned about the closest thing to a silver bullet, and that's the cannabis hemp oil, folks. And I'm glad you guys are hearing about it up there. And I know I'm in California, so it's legal here, and I know some of the best guys, and I know all the other states. So between you and me, if anybody out there is interested in learning more about cannabis hemp oil, let us know. It seems to be one of the best things out there. Have you seen that?
I have. I'm very impressed with it, except they don't have the numbers yet. And the people who are distributing are not medical doctors at this time, as far as I know. I mean, they're people, either cancer survivors themselves, or they are growing their own medical marijuana. And I don't know if you can hear me now, Ian.
Yeah, doctor, he just disconnected. He should come up. He's been going down just for a couple moments.
Okay.
Yep, he should be coming back right now.
Here I am.
Yep,
here I am.
Back.
Yeah, I don't know if you heard my answer to that. Was most of the people that are distributing the hemp oil are not medical doctors, nor are they naturopaths or homeopaths or nurse practitioners. They're people who are usually cancer survivors or who grow medical marijuana for their own use, but they've distilled the hemp oil product from the marijuana plant.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. I mean, that's what's going on right now. It's basically street science. My friends and I, we're all sharing data from the people we know, because as a filmmaker, I've been interviewing people for this. So I take their data and I exchange with my friends. We have to do this on the street because our government won't do it for us. It's horrible. But I'm glad to hear you're hearing good results too, because I'm seeing nothing like, it's nothing like I've ever seen before. Skin cancer just disappearing. Imagine that. The best thing we could do for skin cancer before, and I'm not talking surgery, you should never do that because it doesn't get the roots, was blood root, where it draws it out, but it hurt like childbirth. Now you can use cannabis hemp oil, and that gets rid of the cancer. Have you seen that yet, Doc, on skin cancer?
Absolutely. We use the blood root is, the term for it is either black salve, compound X, Indian mud, or it has various names, bloodroot, and even Dr. Weil in Arizona, Tucson, the father of alternative medicine, feels very strongly that bloodroot is a tremendous product for skin cancers, both basal cell and squamous cell, not particularly for melanomas, though, Ian.
Okay. I missed all that again, sir. I keep getting dropped. Am I back? Can you hear me?
I hear you fine. In fact, you haven't dropped at all from my side.
Oh, okay, good. For some reason, I seem to
the beautiful thing, guys, is the doctor is talking, and literally, Ian, you come back the moment he's done. It's almost like the only issue is the only thing is that you just don't hear what he says, so it just kind of there's a disruption there. But as far as a viewership, it's seamless.
Oh, awesome! That's what I'm telling you. Somebody up there likes me, man. I mean, ever since I've got my mind, body, soul together, it's like parking spots appear for me. I mean, the things I manifest, and the fact that's what I was thinking. It seems like every time I get cut off, it's right at the time I should get cut off, and you should talk, and then you talk until I come back. It's perfect. Right on. So, well, again, I didn't hear the answer, but that's okay. I'll catch it later. I know the answers. That's why I'm asking the question. What else? Oh, you know what, man? I had to tell you. Did you hear we lost our dear friend Jessica recently?
I did. I'm so sorry about that. I know you were closely involved with her. She had breast cancer. I treated her over 10 years ago. She was on the program Viera called The Incurables. They did a special on her life that was on the cable network and replayed many, many times. She was a wonderful gal, and she always was present at the cancer control meetings, Ian.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry, I went off there again for a second there. Yeah, well, it's Jessica Biscardi we're talking about. She was the executive producer of iCure Cancer. And it's unfortunate because I've had people, because she was like a poster child for alternative medicine. Yourself and Dr. Bernardo came in with the alkaline diet, and she had bad cancer everywhere, brain, lungs, everywhere, and y'all cured it. But what happened was her nephew died recently, and she was very attached to that nephew, and she just lost the plot, went off the program, didn't do the poly-MVA, didn't do the alkaline diet, I guess, and her depression got to her, man, and that's what kicked in, I think. So it wasn't that the program stopped working. She stopped doing the program, and that's what Dr. Bernard used to say. I'm sure you say, I say, this is a lifelong life change. You don't just switch, get clean, and then go back to your ways. Of course it's going to come back. So folks out there, remember, stay clean. Once you reset this button in your body to have your alkaline system and everything working, and hopefully cannabinoids too, you have to keep it that way. You can't go back, correct?
I agree absolutely with you. This is a lifelong mission. You made that point very strongly and very emphatically, Ian. I couldn't agree with you more that it has to be a mission for you the rest of your life to stay on course and not get complacent, not get back into the carbs, the simple sugars, keep your body alkaline, keep up whatever else, even something like cannabis. If it is helping you, keep it up.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. What else did I want to talk to you about? Because it's hard to know now because I didn't hear all the answers, so it's not stimulating more. Is there anything you want to bring up? What was your what are the new things compared to, say, 10 years ago when I was there shooting you with Jessica? What are you guys doing in addition to the poly MBA?
Well, we're using things like metformin, which is a pre-diabetic drug. It seems to keep the sugar away from the cancer. It is safe. It's 500 milligrams twice a day, and seems to be well tolerated by most people without many side effects. We're using naltrexone, which is a antagonist of narcotics. So if you went to the emergency room with an overdose of, say, Demerol or Percodan or Dilaudid, they would give you an injection of high-dose naltrexone to reverse the narcotic effects. Well, the low-dose naltrexone, which is low dose, I mean 4.5 milligrams to begin with, will actually stop the cancer growth, and no one really knows the true mechanism yet. It's one of those things that works, but no one really understands how. But it does work, and it has to do with the endorphins. They don't really know exactly at what point in the cancer metabolism it enters, but it does help. And it's without any side effects, so it's very safe, and it's also cheap. We're looking at things like the BX vaccine from, you may have heard of this, it's out of Carlsbad in Mexico. Dr. Jimenez in Tijuana has it. You probably know Dr. Tony Jimenez. Mm-hmm. The BX vaccine is extracted from the mycoplasma bacteria. And I've seen cases where breast cancer has totally gone into 100% remission with a massive lesion on the chest wall. So it has value. It's just not enough numbers yet, and he's gathering the numbers now, and I think we're going to hear more about it in the near future. There's the Intercell product from out of Florida, Sarasota. Dr. Christensen is behind this product. It's been used. I understand that the former Korean president Kim Jong-il used it in his cancer. And the Intercell stimulates immune function. It's given for 42 days in a row, including weekends, so it's not easy. That looks very promising too, but again, we don't have numbers. The good thing about what I'm doing with the chemosensitivity testing and the IPT is my conventional colleagues will not believe anything I say unless I produce large numbers. And they have a hard time arguing against 500 or 1,000 patients. With testimonials also, and I have lots of testimonials on Facebook and YouTube, and we collect them in our office as well. And last year, I'm thinking that this year's almost over, but this past year I've been to 6 different conferences, and I had to miss a couple because of some health problems, but basically I'm spreading the word as much as I can, and we're having a IPT conference in Reno in April, so any of our listeners that are interested, at the Grand Sierra, the Grand Sierra Hotel, it used to be the MGM, in April, and that's going to bring together probably 300 or 400 doctors who are interested in doing low-dose, non-toxic, insulin-potentiated chemotherapy.
Thank you, God. Oh, my God. So people are waking up. That's really good to know. Wow. Shoot, what I want to say right there. I'm making notes, too. Oh, yeah. What I want to know is if I came to you right now and said, I got prostate cancer, what would you tell me? Would you go into the old spiel, we got to do chemo radiation surgery, or do you say, let's try alternative first, or what would you say? I mean, obviously it depends on the case, but do you ever just say, let's not even go with the chemo radiation, let's just do the holistic?
Absolutely. We sometimes will start with the holistic. The diet is extremely important in prostate. We know that poly itself works alone in prostate. We know that the alkaline diet is extremely important in prostate. hyperoxygenation, which can be either ozone, it can be peroxide, it can be hyperbaric chamber. We like peroxide, it's the simplest and cheapest, and probably the least dangerous. So all of
So that's
those,
amazing. Let me just say that I have to say this, folks. This is beautiful what he's saying, because what most oncologists would do is say, we got to do surgery, radiation, chemo, because they're going to get about $250,000 out of you for that. And guess what, boys? Guess what, boys? You take your prostate out when you're kind of young and you maybe 50s or whatever. No more hanky-panky, no more fooling around. So that's a very horrible operation to get if you're still young enough to enjoy life. So thank you, Dr. Forsythe. That is so honorable and the way it should be. The way it should be.
Let me amplify that, what Ian just said to our viewers. A radical prostatectomy, and I'm going to get the anger and hatred from a lot of urologists, but 80% ED after radical prostatectomy, erectile dysfunction, about 20 to 25% of leakage, either from the bowel or bladder. Then there's the infectious problems with all the horrible resistant staph and resistant E. coli. If you come out of the hospital without an infection, you're a lucky man. So all of those things, plus we haven't even mentioned the risk from anesthesia. It's not a minor thing. So please do not rush into surgery. Do the alternative options first. Most prostate cancers are slow growing. In fact, the head of the American Society of Urology said there is no standard treatment for early prostate cancer in this country. So all the options are open to you. You don't have to rush into surgery or radiation. Radiation has a few less adverse effects, but there's still a lot. I mean, radiation, proctitis, cystitis, strictures of the urethra, ED still occurs. So don't rush into radiation, surgery, or the new kid on the block is proton therapy, heavy particle beam therapy. Go with the alternative. Go and get your genomics testing, because even a very early prostate cancer, I'm talking about a stage 1, even a low Gleason score, a 5 or 6 Gleason, which is the amount of dedifferentiation of the cancer, will have circulating cancer cells, and these cancer cells are going to tell us what drugs and what supplements are going to be best for you, and whether or not any hormones are going to be, hormone blockers are going to be helpful. So you've got a triple advantage right there for a couple $1,000. Not
right. And Dr. Bernard, who I always talk about, because he was a guy that would, you know, when people didn't have a lot of money, he would help out, and he knew he was sort of like teach you how to cure yourself at home. And he always said he never lost one person to prostate cancer. It just needed some nutrition, some lipocene or something. So, yeah. And look at you. You're an oncologist, and you're saying don't do surgery, don't do chemo. Try the alternative. I hope some oncologists are out there watching, because we need more guys like you, brother. That makes me feel good.
I'm not the most
right on. So,
but we do have a foundation at our clinic called the Forsythe Wellness Clinic Foundation, which gives patients the money to have the genomic testing done. If they come in poor, we can still do it for them and reimburse them for the test. It's a tax exempt foundation, and they can, and we'll take donors of all kinds. We've had some very powerful people come to our clinic. Because of HIPAA rules, I'm not allowed to mention names, but that have given us money, good money, to carry on this foundation. And we, my wife and I, have donated nearly $500,000 of our own funds to the foundation. So we're serious about this.
Okay, so if I have, because most of my friends are poor, and they're hurting and they're in Reno, I could tell them to give you a call. You might be able to work something out for them.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, cool. Now, do you ever? Because my guys in Mexico, they're oncologists, and they admit it. They say, chemo and radiation is great if you just use it in the right dose, like the IPT you're talking about. And for those of you who don't know, insulin potentiation therapy is basically, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, they bring you into an almost diabetic state where your body's craving sugar so bad, and then they give you that sugar with the chemo, and it goes, who eats it first? The cancer cells. So it goes right there, and they can use very low doses of chemo and kill the cancer that way without, getting you all full of toxins and stuff, correct?
Right. I have modified, that's the Donato Garcia method that's been around for 40 years or so. I have modified that somewhat where I give the insulin right with the chemo, and I've had over 90% turnover in 3 to 4 weeks, Ian, so without making them severely hypoglycemic, because severe hypoglycemia is not a laughing matter. You can have seizures, you can have hypotension, you can even have death if it's out of control. So we don't want to go there. Our clinic will never let a patient go below 40. So 40 blood sugar is is the bottom that we aim for. And I feel, and we call it the IPT Lite, L-I-T-E. Annie Brandt, who's one of our IPT gals, one of the CEOs of the IPT program, has named it the Forsythe IPT Lite protocol. And frankly, that's all I use. I don't use the old one from that was developed in South America, just because the risks involved. I don't want to take risks with my patients.
Right. Now, what is, okay, you said definitely no to prostate cancer, and I assume you would probably say the same thing to skin cancer, because you know that there's no sense in doing chemo radiation for that if you could just pull it out with bloodroot or cannabis hemp oil. Are there any cancers that you would recommend doing the low-dose chemo and radiation for? And the holistic, of course?
Well, I think with a brain tumor, Ian, you have a problem with brain tumors. First of all, they don't circulate tumor cells. Number one, you can't do the peripheral blood testing because the cancer never leaves the central nervous system. In other words, it's in the spinal fluid, it's in the ventricular fluid, it's in the brain itself, but it never crosses the blood-brain barrier and gets into the main circulation. So
I did not know.
Yeah, so it's worthless to do the chemosensitivity because you're not going to find circulating cancer cells, and it's just going to cost the patient needless money. So we don't do it. In those cases, because you don't want the brain tumor to impinge on the motor centers and end up with a paralyzed arm or paralyzed leg, aphasia or speech difficulty, swallowing difficulty, cognitive dysfunction. You don't want those horrible things that happen after strokes or after a tumor, if it's in the wrong place, will cause. Now, if it's in the frontal lobes, you're safer because the frontal lobes, as you know, they used to do frontal lobotomies. You lose some emotional effect, but you're not going to lose motor effect. So the frontal lobes are pretty safe as a rule. But if it's in the parietal lobes or occipital lobes or temporal lobes, then you got a problem. So you do have to go to radiation in those cases. And yes, I do use radiation, but we do use low-dose chemo. We just use the standard, the best drugs.
Right, that's good. That's key. Most people don't understand. One of my friends put it perfectly to say, in America, if it calls for a cup, they give you a cup, whether it kills you or cures you. You're obviously not doing that, and you're making sure the person's not allergic to that chemo, because I know one girl, one of my friend's daughters died because of that, because the kind of chemo they chose just didn't mix with her and killed her. Horrible. Okay. Do you want to talk a little bit about, well, before we go into that, I want to get into childhood cancer in these last 10 minutes, because that's what my film Part 2 is about, that I've already interviewed you for about this FDA thing, and I'm hoping to get you again, or maybe we'll use clips from this, so be good on this answer, okay?
Let me amplify your last comment first, because I think that's important for the viewers to understand. Even with conventional chemotherapy, you can end up in the hospital in dire straits or even die with full dose chemotherapy, because first of all, they don't know, you're a chemotherapy virgin at that point. They don't know how you're going to respond. And some of these drugs, while they think they're the right dose, for your particular makeup, they may be much too high, and your blood counts may drop precipitously. I'm talking about your red cells, white cells, platelets. And if you become anemic or very thrombocytopenic or neutropenic, neutropenia, of course, can lead to severe infections. If you have a white count that's below 1,000, you're very susceptible to any kind of infection, even fungal infections. So you're absolutely right by saying don't look at chemotherapy as something benign that's not going to hurt you, because if you're going in for full dose chemo, you're putting your life on the line.
Oh yeah. I wanted to ask about the brain cancer. What do you think of Brzezinski's treatment with the angioplastins? Are you able to use that in Nevada? I mean, how does that work?
Well, he has a special deal. You're talking about Stanislaus Brzezinski from Houston, Texas, in his clinic, which is widely recognized as an excellent alternative clinic, especially good with brain cancers and lymphomas, but not that great in other things for some reason. And he doesn't do IPT, he doesn't do chemosensitivity on a wide scale, but he does have the anti-neoplastin, which has shown to be effective in many brain tumors, and he's has a good track record with that, and he's done well. But because the FDA has put him into a corner, all he can use that anti-neoplastin on is brain tumors. They won't allow him to use it on any other adult cancer. So for that reason, I think it's a bad deal.
Yeah. Well, he totally got screwed, and I can't believe they're still going after him. I mean, even in the movie, the Brzezinski movie, the FDA, the judges were saying, "This is how many times you guys FDA guys, you're gonna sit in front of us and try and take this man down. Leave him alone." And then I just heard recently they're after him again. It's unreal what's going on. My film, part 2, is about childhood cancer and how parents have no rights at all. They take your child away, put you in jail. The child goes to child services and into an orphanage. I'm following 3 families right now who have been cured of their leukemias, because the cannabis hemp oil is very good for leukemia, yet they're still being forced chemotherapy for another 2 to 3 years, which is unreal. They're cancer-free, and they're going to feed them this toxins for 2 or 3 years, because that's our standard of care. Any thoughts on this, or what we can do about it?
Well, first of all, we don't know what Obamacare is going to do or offer or force us to do. Because of my license, I'm not allowed to treat any child that's younger than 16. So I really don't treat children. I'm familiar with childhood cancers, however, because I used to, when I was in San Francisco practicing, treat a few. And it was the California laws were different than Nevada laws because there was a shortage of pediatric oncologists. And so if you got a childhood leukemia or childhood brain tumor, you had to treat them. So, but in Nevada, because the laws are such, we're not allowed to treat children under the age of 16. I've treated lots of 16, 17, 18-year-olds, but so I can't really address the whole problem that you're asking about. I think it's a very touchy thing. First of all, if something goes wrong when you're giving alternative therapies to a child, it's a whole different ballgame, Ian, as you probably know. Not only, well, the doctor's at great risk, because if anything does go wrong, they're going to come back and blame it on the doctor. It's like killing the Greek runner. And lots of doctors have been taken down by being overly aggressive. I know several, and I can't mention their names, but that have lost their license because they were aggressive treating childhood diseases, not only cancer conditions, but other conditions, when they shouldn't have been. So
what's sad is probably the alternative that they were trying was definitely not as bad as what the alternative to that was, which would be chemo, radiation, surgery. I would assume. I mean, unless there's some idiot out there,
no, I agree. But they all line up against you, and then they say, well, this is the standard of care, and you violated the standard of care, and blah, 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 and the child is dead, and you got a sympathetic jury. And so, it's something you don't really want to deal with.
Yeah. Did you hear about this whole Amish girl? I helped with that a little bit. Me and my friends from Natural News, we were putting them on our shows and letting them letting the world know what was happening to this Amish family she's one of the ones that's been cured of leukemia, and not even using cannabis hemp oil. I think they use other alternatives, and she's cancer free, and they want to keep forcing it. So she left the country, and the judges finally changed the thing, and now she's allowed back in the country. Have you guys heard about that up in Reno?
I've heard about it. I haven't been following it too closely though. So good for you for doing it. I think, and you're brave because first of all, you don't have a license to lose, which is good.
Yeah.
And you're a freelancer, and I think that probably needs someone like you to do that kind of thing.
That's, yeah. As a filmmaker and former kickboxing champion, I'm definitely not afraid. I mean, yeah, they could kill me. That's what my friends worry about. They're probably going to take you out. I'm like, well, I just can't stop now. I mean, I found out cancer's curable. Well, then kill me then, because I'm not going to shut up. I got to tell my family, my friends, my neighbors, anybody in the world that's going to listen. You don't have to die of cancer in this day and age. You just basically have to be your own best advocate and figure things out. You know?
Yeah.
Don't you agree?
I have a lady, 70-year-old lady or about that age, who has stage 2 breast cancer, who decided, and she just wrote a book called Say No to Conventional Radiation and Chemotherapy for stage 2 breast cancer. And we treated her, and she's 3 or 4 years out now, cured, and the tumor's gone away. She actually got off the radiation table when they were mapping her out for radiation for her right breast lesion, and she had an epiphany. She says, I don't belong here. She threw off the covers, she said she had an open gown on, her fanny was shaking in the breeze. She went out to her car, didn't even get her clothes on, and drove off and said, hasta la vista, baby.
That was God talking right to her. One of her angels kicked in that day, boy, because she saved herself some misery. Oh.
Really, that was wonderful. I just thought that was great.
Yeah, so you're totally recovered then from your nightmare legal thing, right? You won, right? I didn't hear your answer. So you won the case, and they leave you alone now?
They have so far, but we had a few cases that we won in regard to that. But I'm not allowed to talk about settlements. But so we were. And, things have worked out well for us. Suzanne Somers' book, Knockout, really put us on the map as far as national notoriety, and brought it, because it was a national bestseller for over several years, brought us patients from all over the world, even as far as Nigeria, New Zealand, oh gosh, lots from Canada, England, South America, Central America, so on. So we're still getting patients. People will bring in that book. They love that book for some, and I only have a measly, 14 pages in a chapter 9, and they like what I have to say. I did the interview over the phone, and they were happy with what they read in the book, and for some reason that's their Bible. They bring it in like a Bible. They've earmarked every page, and and again,
look at me. There we go, all earmarked. Because it was the first one of its kind. Like, I was learning this through Cynthia Brooks, who's my friend and co-host on the iCure Cancer Show. She didn't use this. She used everything else, just her mind and her heart and God. And then I learned all that stuff. Then I got this book, and I'm like, wow, they know it too. What a crazy life it's been, man. I thought I was just supposed to be a kickboxing champion and like the next Arnold Schwarzenegger. And next thing you know, I'm helping people cure cancer. Crazy life, man.
I hope you're.
I love it. I love everything. Yeah.
And I've written about 14 books. I've written the Forsythe Anti-Cancer Diet book. I've written the Take Control of Your Cancer book. We've written several books on HGH in adults, Your Secret to the Fountain of Youth. We've written the Compassionate Oncology, written a couple books on pain and sleep. And so I've just been prolific ever since the trial. And one of my publishers said, I looked for your name early on, and you're in your late 60s now. And he said, I've never seen you publish before, and all of a sudden you're publishing all these books. I said, yeah, I was inspired by the trial. I said, figured, hey, I could be sitting in a jail cell now writing a book, and that would be miserable. So why not?
Well, thank God everything worked out and you're free because you're one of the good guys. We need you, man. Looks like we're out of time here. So it's drforsythe.com, right? If people want to go check your stuff out.
Yeah, there's another website, email Reno Wellness Doctor Dr. at yahoo.com is another good one. And we have, that's an email, and www.drforsythe.com or info@drforsythe.com. Got a bunch. We're also on Facebook and YouTube. So
yeah, we just friended up finally on Facebook, so anybody can reach it through me as well. You can go to iCure Cancer, folks. Okay, I guess we're out of time, so I got to run here, James. But thank you so much for spending time with me. This is a wonderful last show of the year, folks. I want to wish everybody happy holidays. Happy holidays to you, James.
Well, Merry Christmas to you and Happy New Year. You're a wonderful guy, and let us know what we can do to support you.
Oh, thanks. I'll give you a call, man. Right on. Okay, you have a good day. Merry Christmas, everybody. See you next year.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.